One of the reasons I wanted to make this video is because I've been following the recent discussions around oil and gas exploration in Jamaica. The media coverage, the social media posts, and the wider public debate. I haven't commented much on it beyond one previous video because even though I am a geologist who has worked in Jamaica, my primary expertise is not in oil and gas. My work has focused more on industrial minerals, and these days I'm largely focused on water resources. There are colleagues of mine, both in Jamaica and internationally, who work directly in petroleum geology and who could explain certain technical aspects of this topic better than I can. That said, there are still some fundamental geological and historical aspects of oil and gas that I do understand both from my own training and from years of reading the literature and engaging with geologists with far more experience than myself in academia and industry. One thing that stands out to me is that in many of these public discussions, both geology and the historical context of oil and gas exploration in Jamaica are often missing. That absence to me reflects either a gap in how the history of the geological exploration in Jamaica is being integrated into the conversation, or a broader misunderstanding of how resources like oil and gas actually work. A recent example of this comes from an article in the Jamaica Observer titled "Jamaica's Oil Opportunity Requires Strategic Preparation, Not Celebration." It is, in my view, an excellent and well-written piece. It argues that Jamaica must prioritize strategic, legal, educational, and institutional preparation to ensure that any potential hydrocarbon discovery contributes to long-term national development rather than the resource curse. However, I do have a few points of disagreement. The article includes a section that states, and I quote, "Since the 1950s, successive administrations have recognized the importance of energy security to economic development and have made meaningful contributions to our energy journey. The acquisition and establishment of Petrojam in the 1960s, expansion of refining capacity, and the legislative framework of the Petroleum Act in the 1970s, followed by the full acquisition of Petrojam in 2019, all reflect a consistent understanding that energy infrastructure plays a critical role in national resilience and competitiveness." End quote. My concern with this framing is that, based on my understanding of the geological literature, the interest in hydrocarbons in Jamaica extends far farther back than the 1950s. In fact, geological observations and discussions of petroleum potential in the island go back well over 150 years, with documented interest appearing as early as the 19th century. Another section of the article states, and I quote, "Jamaica already possesses several foundational advantages, including an established petroleum institution in the Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica, refining capability through Petrojam, and strong engineering programs at UTEC, CMU, the UWI, which produce graduates in disciplines directly transferable to the energy sector." It further adds that opportunities will extend beyond engineers into areas such as project management, finance, environmental management, law, logistics, and regulatory oversight, and that strong local content legislation will be essential to ensure broad national participation in any future industry. And while I agree with that, what stands out to me is what is not explicitly mentioned: the central role of petroleum geoscientists if any petroleum industry is ever to be meaningfully developed in Jamaica. Then geologists, particularly petroleum geologists, are fundamental to every stage: exploration, evaluation, and long-term resource management. This also connects to a broader historical point that is often overlooked. Jamaica has a long geological research tradition. Scholars such as Professor Simon Mitchell at the University of the West Indies have made significant contributions over decades that have helped shape our understanding of the island's geology, including aspects relevant to hydrocarbon systems. He and others trained many of the geologists who ended up working in industry in Jamaica, myself included. Yes, there isn't a robust oil and gas industry in Jamaica as we are not an oil producing nation, but the skills we developed in the Department of Geography and Geology at the University of the West Indies, Mona, for those of us who did go on to find jobs relevant to geoscience after our degrees, led into a wide range of geoscience career paths. Many of my colleagues went into groundwater and water resource management. Others went into mining and quarrying, the cement industry, bauxite, environmental and construction materials, and broader applications in engineering geology. Some of us ended up in oil and gas, working locally with the Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica, and others with international companies operating in or connected to Jamaica. But I digress. What is important to understand is that even though most of us did not directly enter the oil and gas industry, our training was still deeply relevant to oil and gas. Within the Department of Geography and Geology at UWI-Mona, at least when I was there, we were exposed to advanced sedimentology and sequence stratigraphy, both of which have direct applications in petroleum geology and basin analysis. So while Jamaica has not developed a large-scale petroleum industry to date, there has still been a long-standing academic and professional foundation of geological expertise that feeds into how we understand the subsurface today. And that brings me back to the main point. Most of the talking points in the recent discourse are not new. There is a geological and intellectual history stretching back nearly 2 centuries that underpins today's discussions around United Oil and Gas and offshore exploration. And if Jamaica is ever to seriously develop a petroleum industry, then geological experts, the history of the geological work in the island, and geoscientists themselves must be central to the conversation, not treated as an afterthought. Otherwise, we risk building policy and expectations without fully understanding the foundation beneath them, and that can create its own set of problems. So, with that in mind, the question now becomes, where did all this actually begin? To understand that, we need to go back long before modern exploration companies, long before state petroleum institutions, and even long before Jamaica had a formal energy policy. We need to go back to the 1800s. And that's where the story really starts. So, this is the end of part 1. Join me next time for part 2 as we look at the history of oil and gas exploration in Jamaica, the aspects of the history not spoken about in most public discourse. I'll see you then, so take care.